Welcome to Missions Life, where we share resources and encouragement for current missionaries, future missionaries, and those praying for missionaries. Missions can be hard, and we want to help you face the challenges of life, leadership, and ministry. We want your life to bear fruit for the gospel wherever you are. I'm Kyle Ferran, here with my co-host and wife, Heather. Today, I have on the podcast with me Dr. Hans Finzel, and Hans is a successful author, speaker, and trusted authority in the field of leadership. For 20 years, he served as the president of international nonprofit World Venture, working in over 65 countries. Hans speaks, writes, and teaches practical leadership principles. He's written 11 books, including his international bestseller, The Top 10 Mistakes Leaders Make. Having trained leaders on 5 continents in his career, his books have been translated into over 25 foreign languages. Today, he serves as president of HD Leaders and teaches, consults, and speaks globally on all things leadership. And I know personally, I've really benefited from Hans' books. They've been some of the first books that I read as I was getting started off in leadership. And last year, also hired Hans as a leadership coach and gleaned a ton from our conversations together. So Hans, it's a real joy to welcome you to the Missions Life podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation today about leadership and missions.
Thank you, Kyle.
Welcome.
Great to be with you today. Awesome.
Well, Hans, before we dive into leadership questions, could you just take a little bit to share about your missions journey?
Yes, it all started for me when I was converted, when Jesus found me as a lost student at the University of Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I grew up in a non-Christian home, a Lutheran home, but what I call lost Lutherans, and because I'm German. And anyway, I always say that I feel like Jesus found me. I was so lost, and he, like the Apostle Paul, who was interrupted on his journey, I was interrupted and gloriously transformed, and just became a radical Christian. And these were in the days of, the Jesus movement. But as soon as I was converted, I said, Lord, I want to spend the rest of my life telling other people what I didn't know for 19 years. And so I went to this little school in South Carolina called Columbia International University. It used to be called Columbia Bible College, because I heard there was a school where you could, the purpose of the school was to know him and to make him known. I thought, wow, that is the purpose of my life, to know him and to make him known. So I went to school there. I met my wife there. We've been married for 49 years now. I really got to know Jesus at that school. I'm now on the board of trustees, by the way. Just a little plug for CIU. It's a great school. We have a fantastic doctorate of organizational leadership that has become very popular in the world of missions.
My brother's taking that right now.
Yeah, it's a fantastic program, a totally online 2-year PhD in leadership. Highly recommend it. And then that's where I really got called into missions and learned, it's like God opened my eyes and my mind and my spirit to what I like to say, taking my little flashlight to the darkest places on earth. It's not so much how bright our flashlight is sometimes, it's where do we shine it. And to me, that's what missions is. It's taking the good news to the least serviced, darkest places on earth. So I went on to seminary, and then we went into missions and served overseas for 10 years in Austria and Europe, not far from where you are, Kyle, over there in the European harvest, and then became the president of our ministry for 20 years. So 32 total years in missions.
Okay, very good. What led you to focus on developing other leaders in your journey in leadership?
Yeah, people ask me, Kyle, why are you so obsessed about leadership? And by the way, I'm not saying I'm a great leader. I just have made all the mistakes. Maybe that's why I've learned a lot. But I suffered under really bad leadership on the mission field. And I found out I'm not alone. There's a lot of bad, poor leadership, incompetent leadership on the mission field. But think about it. People go overseas and they get called to be missionaries, not to lead other missionaries. They go overseas to lead people to Christ, right? And to train national leaders. They never signed up to lead other missionaries, but somebody has to be the field leaders and somebody has to lead the missionaries on the field. And oftentimes I found in our organization, they were very reluctant, didn't want to do it, and actually weren't very good at it. And I particularly was under a micromanaging apostolic kind of leader who felt like his answer to anytime we confronted him, like questioning our direction as a team, he would say, well, God told me, this is the way we should go. It's the God card. How can
Yeah,
you
hard to
argue with
argue.
the God? And I call it the founder's trap. This guy happened to be the founder of the ministry we were a part of. And founders have a unique ability to be control freaks because it's their baby. They started it. He didn't want to share leadership. He wasn't open to input. Just a wonderful, godly man. And Kyle, I've learned that to me, the foundation of great Christian leadership is godliness, prayer, knowing the word, integrity, all those character traits. But on top of that, you need to build leadership skills. And so, long story short, we left the mission field really disillusioned, crushed by that just terrible leadership experience where we couldn't flourish. And I just said, Lord, if I ever become a leader, help me to be the kind of leader that empowers people, that releases people, that sees the best in people and listens. And then I eventually got my doctorate in the field of leadership. So that's why I became obsessed with the topic of leadership, Kyle, because I feel like ministries and churches many times suffer because of poor leadership. And we can only go as far as the leader can take us.
Yeah. That's
And many
a
times I was just going to say the results suffer because of poor leadership, because it goes all the way back to what I call the trickle down effect. You may have phenomenal goals for your ministry, but you're not going to achieve those goals if you don't have healthy leadership.
Yeah. No, that's very, very true. And unfortunately, it's, I think your experience is probably similar to many others around the world. Um, and anything that we
Yeah.
can do to be helping those missions leaders grow has a trickle down effect for all the missionaries as well. And so that's huge. As you mentioned, the need for that character, godliness growth, and I 100% agree with you on that. That's what my book was all about, was does that focus on character. But at the same time, just like you mentioned, there is the importance of having growth in those competencies, just like David or says in the Psalms that David shepherded them with an upright heart and a skillful hand. Those competencies are so important. What do you feel as you look at all the different leadership competencies out there? What do you feel are the key areas that leaders need to be focusing on?
Yeah, I made a list of 4 and 4. Actually, I started with character because I do want to touch on the character question real quick. Because
Go for it.
I always ask my audiences when I speak, how many of you have worked for a terrible boss? Everybody raises their hands. It's amazing. And then I ask what made them so terrible. And oftentimes it was actually character issues, not competency issues, that made people lose their trust. So the 4 that I think are so important are integrity, honesty, transparency, and humility. Those are 4 character qualities that I hear so many people say, I lost faith in my leader and I no longer trusted her or him because of these lack of integrity, lack of honesty, lack of transparency, or lack of humility. So those are the character issues. I like to say people don't quit jobs, they quit leaders. And many times they quit leaders because of these character problems. But competencies, oh my goodness. No, leadership is a lot like love. It's very complicated. And the list of competencies go on and on and on. And when I was in top leadership in the world of missions, my wife often used to tell me, Hans, there is no way you can fulfill everybody's expectations of you. The list is just too long. But here's the top four that I just wrote. Communication skills. That's so important. And if you want to drill down on it, we can. Decision-making skills, uh, meeting leadership skills, because like it or not, ministry is all about meetings, right? And teams are all about meetings. So communication skills, decision-making skills, leading meetings well, and then delegation. And we're going to drill down some more later into delegation. But to me, those are four of the most essential core competencies that will create a leadership style that people will respect and follow.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of even overlapping there of those. Your communication skills flows into your ability to lead meetings well if you communicate with clarity. Yeah, so all so
Yeah, and the
essential to be able to
decision
do it.
making also is tied into
Yes.
leading meetings. I had a friend who was uh, he's written a book on emotional intelligence, and he's one that I would recommend for future podcasts. But he used to go into meetings, and the first thing he'd do is sit down and say, "Okay, here's the list of issues we've got to deal with today. Just let me tell you where I'm at with these issues, and then I'll hear what you have to say." So the boss plays his card before anybody speaks. So you can imagine how ineffective those meetings were. And
They're
he
probably
learned
fast, right?
very fast. You know, if you have a meeting and all you hear is crickets, you do not have a good meeting. But he didn't realize he was imposing, he wasn't listening, and he didn't
Mhm.
understand that good decision making is truly, I always say the two biggest words in a leader's vocabulary, the two most important words are listen and learn. And that's part of being a good decision maker is you're listening to your team. And I believe that group decisions are the best decisions. I'm not talking about group think, but I'm talking about team decisions are the strongest decisions.
Yeah, they can help
And then people
identify.
own those. Yeah, people will own those decisions. They'll be vested in them, and they'll help you accomplish them.
Hmm. No, that's really good. Well, obviously, we can't dive super deep into each one of those today, but what do you feel as one of the key topics for leaders today that would you'd like to dive into a bit more?
I think delegation. I've become real obsessed about the topic of delegation lately. And my next book, if I put it together, will be about good delegation versus micromanagement. Because I have a bunch of YouTube videos, and one of my most popular one is called Five Signs You're a Micromanager. And it's popular in a sad way. I just got people are always posting their reactions to it, and they're always telling me about their terrible bosses and what a bunch of
Hmm.
micromanagers they are. And let me read you a couple of comments that they've made. And see, to me, micromanagement is the opposite of great delegation. That's why
Hmm.
it's two sides of a coin. If you're a great delegator, you're not going to be a micromanager, and micromanagers don't know how to delegate well. And we can talk about all the reasons people become micromanagers, but here's what one lady said. I have a micromanager who's so bad I'm about ready to quit. I don't know what to do anymore. He calls so many times. I've started to avoid his phone calls. I can't even sleep at night now because I'm so stressed out. I never want to see him again. That's pretty sad, isn't it?
Wow,
Here's
that's a
another.
sad state of affairs.
Here's another one. He said, "My manager is a beauty. He's a great leader. Yet the company owner, and again, this goes to the founder's trap, the owner is a micromanaging freak who wants to decide everything his way. Even my manager hates it. It's so killing, and he made me hate my job. I always question and wonder if he wants to decide everything in micromanagement. Why does he hire people? He might as well hire robots."
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's the dark side. And I think, Kyle, that micromanagement has become the modern plague in the world of leadership. And here's why. Let's Think about it. Why is micromanagement so frustrating to people? I mean, I can ask you, Kyle, you can answer. Why would you say it's so frustrating to work under a micromanager?
Um, I've had a lot of friends actually that had to leave the mission field from different agencies, and this aspect of micromanaging was the reason, because they felt like they couldn't do what God had called them to do, and they had no, um, yeah, they weren't able to really pursue that, or even to grow, because they were just constantly controlled by these other people. And it was kind of like their way or the highway, and so they ended up taking the highway, unfortunately. And so yeah, so this is really dear to my heart, because I have a lot of friends that have had to leave the mission field because of micromanaging leadership. So this is a very um, yeah, important topic for missions, especially.
I think it's really important. I think that's ultimately why I quit and left the field. And so, and I always say, if you do what comes natural, you won't be a great leader. Because naturally, I think we tend to be micromanagers, and we tend to be selfish and self-centered. It's about me. And I had to make the conversion in my own journey as a leader from it's about me to it's about we. And to me, servant leadership is caring more about the good of the team than your own leadership. And so, if you really do value people, you're going to want them to flourish under you, not suffer. Like you were just describing people that were so put in a box and crushed and stifled, they felt they could not grow and they couldn't flourish. So, to me, delegation is about mentoring. It's about really about discipleship. It's about developing the leaders around you. Good delegation empowers people. And I've come to believe, Kyle, that our ultimate job as leaders is to work ourselves out of a job. And if we do a good job of developing the leaders around us, if we leave one day, or if we get run over by a bus, things will keep going fine without us because we developed a good team around us. When I left World Venture after leading it for 20 years, I had developed a number of guys that could take my place as the president of the mission. And one of the guys was selected by the board, and he did take my place. His name is Jeff. And uh, I remember I told him on my last day at work, hey, just call me if you need me, Jeff. I'm here for you. I mean, I've been leading this thing 20 years. There's no way you can do it without me. Guess how many times he called me? Zero. He never called. At first I felt like, well, they don't need me. How can they possibly do without me? And my wife said, Hans, that's actually a sign you did a good job because they are
Mm,
thriving. And people ask me, that was 10 years ago. People will say, well, how are they doing? I said, they're doing great. They're doing great without me. And that's fine because we have to learn, Kyle, that nobody's indispensable. And
yeah.
people who are workaholics who think they're indispensable. So to me, good delegation skills, and I do want to get to how to be a good delegator. I've got 4 simple keys that'll work it
Mm,
out great. But I think good delegation mentors people. It develops people. It helps people thrive and grow. And it's the opposite of micromanagement. And let's talk for a moment about why do people micromanage? And I think
yeah,
the
so
reason people,
important.
yeah, they have trust issues. They think they can do everything better and faster, so and they don't have patience. But I do think it comes down to trust issues. I also found, Kyle, that the more things you do well and the more gifted you are, the harder it is to be a good delegator because actually you can do it better at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
But great leaders have learned to survive. You've heard this before. You hire or you recruit to your weaknesses. A great leader will build a team of people who are strong where they are weak.
Mm.
But a weak leader will only recruit puppets around them. Boy, I've seen some of that. I've seen that in top mission leadership where people, their board of directors and their leadership team are yes men, and all they do is support the dictator. And that's a sad, toxic state of affairs. Wow.
What are some things that, or perspectives that can help shift a micromanager out of that position to help them to start moving away from that to see how delegation could be valuable? But what are some things you've noticed that have helped people shift out of that micromanaging mindset?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think it starts with this conversion from it's not about me, but it's about we. And if I really believe in teamwork, I have got to start focusing on how can I help my team members flourish. And the only way I can help my team members flourish is to give them a piece of the action, to listen to them, to allow them to have input, to respect their input. We used to work in Eastern Europe and in Russia. I remember the first time I went to Russia years ago before communism fell, and they were so proud that they had full employment in Russia. I went on this tour, and this tour guide was like, talk about propaganda. It was, you know, he said in America, half the people in America are homeless and on the streets, and they don't have anything to eat, and nobody has any work. And here in Russia, everybody has a job. And we used to joke, everybody has a job, but nobody works because communism
Yes.
owned everything, you know? And it was, yes, it was full employment, but everybody's standing around because they had no ownership. It's the difference between renting an apartment and owning your own home. And I've seen my children as they bought homes for themselves, gotten married, had children, bought home. All of a sudden, they really care about taking care of that home. That's what a job is to people. It's, I want a piece of ownership. I want the pride of ownership. So when we accomplish this great task as a team, it's partly because of me that we accomplished it, and I'm going to feel great about it, right? It's
Yeah.
uh, it's it's ownership, and a leader needs to realize they may be the boss, but they don't own everything. And I remember I was often thought, now in the ministry world, we don't have stock. You know, we're not like Elon Musk, who's, I read this week, he's today currently the richest person in the world. And it's because of all that stock he owns in his companies. But we're not like that in the ministry. We don't own stock, but sometimes people in ministry act like they own the place, especially founders again, or the first person in will think, well, I'm the owner. And you just have to get away from that mentality that we together own this thing. And everybody, especially on the leadership team, has a piece of the ownership. And it probably should be more like a law office or a medical practice that's owned by a bunch of doctors where everybody has say because we own it together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does. If people aren't taking ownership and don't feel like they have a say or have any input, eventually they start giving up and pulling back. So they need to be able to have that opportunity to grow and develop.
They definitely don't give it their best because they have,
Yeah.
I remember back to that guy that just crushed my dreams when I was a young missionary. I thought, and he asked me to do some projects, but I got so burned by him not respecting my work and going another direction or dismissing it. So I thought, I'm not going to give him my best. I'm not even going to give him my second best because he doesn't really care.
Hmm.
It's going to be his way. It's going to be his ideas that are going to win the day, not mine. So yeah, let me give you a few tips on how to be a great delegator. Okay,
Yeah, that'd be great
this
to give some pointers on that.
uh, I like to, these are what I call the four questions every follower asks. So here's a tip: if you want to be a great delegator and you want to learn to be an effective leader, Here's 4 questions every follower asks. If you have somebody on your team, these are their questions. They may not know it's their questions, but it is. Number 1, what am I supposed to do? Number 2, will you let me do it? Number 3, will you let me know how I'm doing? And number 4, will you help me when I need it? Those are the 4 questions that every follower asks. And if you master the skill of giving them these answers well, you'll learn to be a great delegator. What am I supposed to do? And that's just clarity. And by the way, that goes back to communication skills, where you're clear on your expectations. If you're
Yep.
fuzzy on what you really want, how are people going to know what to do? You know,
A
so
helpful tool on that I've found is having living documents, like whether it be like a Google Doc or something like that, of like just that clarity of if I am delegating something, so that it's all there, so people can I can add stuff to it and stuff. But then there's always a clear um, description of what's the end, what's the end goal there, and that's been a helpful tool for
it's
delegating for myself.
that's good. It's very important that you're clear, and that can be a project description or it can be a job description, either one. But
Mm,
that's where you start. Number 2, will you let me do it? Now there's the delegation. Are you give me some freedom to put my own personality into this and my own gifting into this? Are you going to let me do this project? Or are you going to look over my shoulder every minute like those micromanager constantly phone calling and looking over the shoulder because they want you to do it their way? No, will you let me do it? Are you going to give me some freedom? And number 3, will you let me know how I'm doing? And that's measurement. One of the signs of a miserable job is I'm never measured. Nobody ever
mm,
tells me how I'm doing. My second son, Jeremy, works for a big banking company in Chicago, and he's got a fantastic job, and he's got 4 children, and he's a wonderful father. But he's always telling me, and he gets once a year, he gets an annual bonus. He just got it for the year, and he said, "Dad, I wish my boss would tell me more about how I'm doing, would give me some feedback." I said, every time I ask my boss how I'm doing, one word, great. And Jeremy said, that's just not enough. When
it's
people
hard to
ask you
grow
how
from
you're
that.
doing, you got it right. You got to say more than great. People actually crave measurement. They want to know how they're doing. I practiced in my annual reviews with the people that reported to me. One thing is I practiced the 80-20 rule. 80% was positive, 20% was negative. I always felt I had to give them some improvement goals. Nobody's
Hmm.
perfect, but I'm an encourager at heart, so I'm going to give them a lot more positives than negatives. But people want to know concretely, what are they doing well and
Hmm.
what can I do to improve? The fellow that eventually took my place, Jeff, and I don't think this is speaking confidentially, but a few times in his annual review, I said, Jeff, you need to learn to be a better speaker, because if you're a leader, you will be a speaker. And I encouraged him to take some speaking courses, and he did, and he improved his speaking ability. That's a great illustration of just giving somebody a coaching tip.
Yeah.
There's always things we can do better. So will you let me know how I'm doing? And then the fourth question, will you help me when I need it? And boy, I really grew in this area. That means, are you available? Not micromanaging, but I treated people often like they were the Energizer Bunny. I trust people too much. My philosophy is you hire great people and then you set them loose and let them roam and let them be free. And I realized I do need to be around to be available when they need me, because they're not like the Energizer Bunny. They need touch points along the way. My father helped build the Apollo, the Saturn V that put us on the moon years ago in the United States. And I
Hmm.
remember, and they actually used slide rules. They didn't. we have more computing power in our iPhone than they had in their entire room of computers. But they use slide rules. But you've probably heard this illustration. If they were off just a few inches on the outbound flight of the Saturn, they would have missed the moon by hundreds of thousands of miles. And it's the same way with leadership. That's why you need those touch points along the way. Will you help me when I need it? You don't want them to get too far afield. I've seen leaders give people so much freedom, and then 6 months later they come back with the finished project, and the leader says, "Oh, this is ridiculous. This sucks. This is so far off base. No, we can't use this. You just wasted 6 months." Well, that's the fault of the leader not having the touch points along the way for correction. So what am I supposed to do? Will you let me do it? Will you help me when I need it? And will you let me know how I'm doing, and will you help me when I need it?
Very good. I know someone had recommended once to set those touch points in advance when setting up the delegation. Have you had any experience or thoughts on how to do that best?
Absolutely. I think it's very important. If you're okay, let's use an example. You're going to redesign our website for us. That's a big project, and here's the parameters. Here's what you're supposed to. This is what we want at the end. But every 2 weeks we're going to have a checkup meeting where you're going to report on your progress. Yeah, I think it's very important. If it's a 6-month project, maybe once a month is enough. But yes, I think you need to schedule the touch points because we're also very busy. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I notice it kind of helps it catches things before they're too far off the rails. But it also doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like you're micromanaging them or like coming in to jump in on something. You don't have to wait till it's really gone off the rails to address something. You can just have those meetings scheduled regularly. So that was a helpful tip that I found very beneficial. So
another helpful tip along this very line. Now, some of us are introverts and some of us are extroverts listening to this podcast today. Some of us love meetings because we love people. Other of us hate meetings. Not that we hate people, we're just introverts. And that's me. I don't generally like meetings. I love to work on my own. But I realized, and maybe this is a of course, but I realized I had to have at least a monthly sit down with every one of my direct reports. And that may seem so obvious, but I see leaders that don't do that. They just say, come see me if you need me. That's not a good approach to supervising somebody. Come see me if you need me. I forced us to have a monthly sit down. It was always on the calendar with each. I think I had 6 direct reports. That's a lot of meetings. I don't particularly enjoy that, but I knew. And then in my Evernote, I use Evernote for my filing system, and I would keep a little note for each of my direct reports. And as I was thinking, next time I'm with Gary, I need to ask him about this. Or next time I'm with Gary, we need to talk about it. And then I just put it in Gary's file so I know we're going to have a sit down, and then I can go through those points. Very important. Don't just say, let me know if you need anything. Because again, then you're treating them like the Energizer Bunny, and things are going to get drifted off base, and then you're not being a helpful supervisor.
Yep, that's a good point there. I just want to put a plug in. I use a different program, but that idea that you do with Evernote, I use it with OneNote, and just putting those ideas in there, and that's very, very helpful. It gets it off your brain. Was one thing,
yes.
But it also then helps you to kind of follow up on things and see how things are going and encourage them. You can see growth there, and it can help to make the most of that time with them.
It does. What do you think? Go ahead. It gets it off your brain. And it's important right now. I'm chairing 2 different boards, and so I do that with the president of the ministries. I keep that kind of a list. So oh yeah, I need to ask him how that's going. So same idea.
No, that's good. What do you think some pitfalls for people to avoid in delegation are?
Well, I would say the biggest pitfall is constantly looking over people's shoulder. Um, you have to learn to trust people. And I think the big pitfall is you don't trust them. And it is a lot like parenting. You know, you have children, I have children, and at first they may not do it all that well. I remember when I first taught my son to wash my car. I'm a car freak. I just love cars and I like a clean car inside and out. And if you don't and you're listening, I don't care. You know, some of my kids, the same kid I was just referring to about his boss always just says is great. He's got the messiest car on the planet, but I love him just as much. But I taught my son, Mark, how to wash my car. The first time he washed it, it was terrible. But I had two choices. I could point out all the things he did wrong, or I could point out all the things he did right and say, hey, by the way, next time, again, the 80-20 rule, next
Hmm.
time, pay a little more attention to the wheels, get a rag and actually get the dirt and the cracks in the wheels. And that's the way delegation is. The pitfall is you get upset with them because they didn't do it right the first time, or they didn't do it as good as you would do it. You're never going to develop people with that kind of an attitude. I also believe, Kyle, that it doesn't have to be done your way. There are more than one way to do a job. Now, if it's brain surgery or if you're flying a 747, well, that's different. There's only one way to do it. But in ministry, I find there's usually so many ways to get the job done. So the pitfall is you don't trust people and you think it has to be done your way. And guess what? It doesn't have to be done your way. And if you don't learn to trust people, you're never going to develop people. Now, there will be some people that fail. And, I've had to fire a lot of people in my career. And sometimes Christians won't fire. Now, in the ministry and in the missionary world, it's very difficult to fire people. It's very difficult to fire a missionary because they don't really work for you. Uh, but sometimes you have to invite people off your team in the ministry. And a lot of times Christians are terminally too nice and they won't do that. But I found that sometimes I had to terminate people from being as part of my team because they did not develop. They did
Hmm.
not learn. And no matter how you tried to be a good delegator, it didn't work out for whatever reason. So sometimes you do have to cut your losses and people will not develop the way you'd like them to. But I think most people will.
Yeah. I think that's a key point there. That's, as leaders, we always want to be trying to delegate and help people develop, but we also need to be, as we're building our teams and inviting missionaries to come, one of the key things we should be looking for is that teachability, that desire to develop and to grow, and that requires humility on both sides, the leader's part as well as the team members' parts, to be able to continue to grow together.
That's such an important point, Kyle. Absolutely. It takes humility on both sides. And if they're not teachable, you remember the old navigator saying that we're looking for fat people, faithful, available, and teachable. And that is so true. Uh,
Mm,
the follower has to be teachable as well as the leader.
that's good. There was I can't remember if you quoted it in your book, in one of your books, or where it was I originally saw it, but the one of the biggest helps and challenges for me in the area of delegation was a quote from Ronald Reagan where he said, "There's no end to what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit." And just that idea that, when we're talking about the different ways of doing the delegation, but that idea, for me at least, was a reminder that, so my goal is to see a lot of things get done. for the gospel and to be as useful as possible that way. But I have a limit. So if I do things at the best of my abilities, I can only do up to a certain point. But if I really want to accomplish more, the only way that's going to happen is if I use the principles of delegation and allow more to happen that way. And I think you use some biblical examples of that. I remember at least in one of your books there. Do you want to
Yes,
touch on that a little bit?
I do. I do because I have two of my favorite examples. One is the Old Testament, Moses. The other is the New Testament, Jesus. And Jesus, I like to say, had no plan B. He trained, he mentored, he delegated, and he left. He had no plan B, you know. But let me camp on Moses for a minute because I love Jethro, his father-in-law, who we call the first management consultant in the Bible. You remember Moses, this was right after they had gone through the Red Sea and all these great victories. And Moses had actually sent his children away to live with his father-in-law because he was so busy with the ministry. How many fathers neglect their children like Moses did to do the ministry? And Jethro, he writes, sends a message ahead. Hey, I'm coming back, and by the way, I'm bringing your kids back. You know, I'm a grandpa. I have 11 grandkids, and we love them to death, but I don't want to raise them. Okay, I'm done with that, and I want to have an impact in their lives. But so Jethro comes back, and he watches Moses, and Moses is it's so impressive. You know, Jethro, he's a great consultant because he spends a whole day just watching Moses work, and he's impressed. But then the next day in Exodus 18:14, when his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, while all these people stand around you from morning till evening? What you are doing is not good." Imagine you were in the line of people waiting for Moses to solve your problem. I often think about this long, long line as far as the eye can see, from morning till night. Because he was the only one who could solve their problems, right? He was the judge.
Mm-hmm. The decision
And
maker.
and and he said, "What you're doing is bad for you and bad for them. You're just frustrating them and you're killing yourself." And that's what workaholics do. They literally kill themselves with the work, thinking only they can do it. And so what was the solution that Jethro gave him? Delegate. Create a team. Appoint elders. I like to say spread the load. You'll be better off. You'll be able to be dad again to your children, and they'll be better off. They don't have to wait all day long for you to solve their problems. You will solve the biggest problems. Those will come to you. And that, as you know, the higher you go in leadership, the more you get thrown the biggest, hardest problems, but you don't solve all of them. So I just think and you know, the great thing why I love Moses so much, he responded well to the input of the consultant of his father-in-law, and he did what Jethro suggested. So he was a humble leader. The Bible says Moses was the most humble man on the face of the earth. Many workaholics don't realize they're workaholics, and they don't realize what's wrong with being a workaholic. And Moses, his intentions were nothing but good, right? He was doing what he thought God wanted him to do, and he just had to learn to build a team and to spread the load. I love that, the way he grew through that experience and became a much better leader.
It's really just so important to see that, and that example I think was very helpful for me in seeing the importance of it. That hey, this is the biblical thing. This is something that God has used, um, and it's not dumping. It's allowing other people to grow and use their giftings and how God's gifted them and strengthened them to be able to be used. And it's also an opportunity for humility on our part to be able to let some of those things go and see things go further than what we're able to do. So it can be an exciting thing. It does take some forethought, though. I think that's something that I've learned in the process is that you've you can't just hand it off and say, okay, we're out of here. You have to think ahead and plan ahead and help people to do that. But in the long run, just like you teaching your son how to wash the car, or when we taught our kids how to wash the dishes, in the long run, it pays off. More stuff is accomplished, and so it's an investment of time to delegate
Absolutely.
initially, and to do it well, especially. But in the long run, far far more gets accomplished, and more people are able to use their giftings, and so it's a healthy thing. But it does take some investment, a time investment on our part initially, but the long term payoff is well worth it.
Yeah,
So,
it's like raising children. It's messy. It's not easy. Uh, and that's why I don't want to raise my grandchildren, but it's the same. You're right. It's messy. It takes time. It's a lot easier to do it yourself, especially if you're very gifted. But you just hit the nail on the head. That's the only way you're going to develop other people and actually get more accomplished in the long run.
yeah. Do you have any other resources that you would like to recommend on delegation or along these lines that people could find helpful?
Well, yes, I do.
Okay,
Actually, I would recommend my two books, The Top 10 Mistakes Leaders Make, and that does actually touch on the pitfalls of poor delegation. Uh, the mistakes leaders make, that's a positive book. It's a negative title, but it really solves each of the 10 common mistakes that leaders make. And you can be very effective as a leader, but have blind spots. And one of these mistakes can neutralize your effectiveness. I like what Peter Drucker said. We spend a lot of time teaching leaders what to do. We don't spend enough time teaching leaders what to stop. Half the leaders I've met don't need to learn what to do. They need to learn what to stop doing. I just think that is great. And that's just exactly what the top 10 mistakes leaders make. So I recommend that. Also, my follow up book to that, Top 10 Ways to Be a Great Leader. And that's just if I were going to, as I mentor young leaders, these are the 10 things that I focus on that are the most important skills that you need to learn. So those are a couple of resources I would recommend.
no, that's really good. I think you did you had a podcast out that went over those 10
Yes.
areas. That's right. I
Yeah. If
remember
you
listening to
go,
those.
if you go to my website, hansfinzel.com, I have about 75 podcasts and I go through those. And by the way, those two books are also available that I've read them on audible.com. So you can get the audiobook version of those. And I've gotten to
Great.
where I listen to books a lot more than I read books nowadays.
It's a great way to multitask
It
and
is.
take a boring task and make it a
Yeah.
useful time there. Well, at the end of each podcast, we like to ask people a few fun questions. But what is something you've been reading or listening to that you've enjoyed recently or found helpful?
I just recently read the book by Amy Moran, 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do, which is kind of an interesting. It's a title kind of like my top 10 mistakes leaders make, but 13 things mentally strong people don't do. That's a great book. Highly recommend it.
Okay.
Amy Moran.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes there. Any key takeaways from that one?
It's a lot about having a mindset of, well, I don't want to say positive thinking, but when things happen, you can take a negative view of what happened, or you can take a positive view of what happened. Like, whatever, or don't let people control your emotions and thoughts, what people think of you. It's just a lot of great tips.
Good. Very good.
And
Um,
let me,
next question was
uh,
what Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to ask what activity or hobby do you do to stay energized and refreshed?
The most energizing thing I do is ride my bicycle. I ride, a mountain biker, and I ride almost every day. If I can't ride, I walk. I used to be an avid jogger, but I broke my leg in a bad skiing accident, so I can't run anymore. That used to be I definitely was addicted to running, but now I'm addicted to riding my bike. I find that's the way I get energized and refreshed. Definitely.
I think, and I remember in your book, Top 10 Leadership Commandments, you'd mentioned that you'd even structured that into your day when you were the president to be able to
Yes.
stay energized and healthy.
Yes.
How did you prioritize that?
I'm glad you mentioned that because we've raised four children on the mission field, and I I I never wanted to sacrifice my children for the ministry, and I found that once I got home from work, the office in the evening. Back in those days, we had offices, but when I got done with work, I felt like I really needed to lean in to help make dinner, help with the kids, homework, putting them to bed, reading, just being with the family after work. So I never worked at night. And I didn't find, and I'm not a morning person. So I found that working out before work was just not an option for me. So I always worked out at lunchtime. And when we lived in Austria for 10 years, we had the Run for Lunch bunch. And a whole bunch of us guys went running every day at lunch. We had a shower at our office. So we had the Run for Lunch bunch. And I carried that through my entire career. When we built our office in Colorado, our ministry headquarters, we built a gym in the basement. They called it the Finzel Fitness Center. And we had a men and women shower and a nice fitness center. So I carried that tradition on for riding my bike at lunchtime. If I didn't have a business lunch, I either had a business
Yeah.
lunch with somebody, a ministry lunch, or I rode my bike during lunch. So yeah, I think for me, it worked great because I got my workout. I couldn't do it before I went to work in the morning, and I didn't want to invade the family time after work.
It's a good practice to stay healthy as well as fit a lot of stuff in there and then prioritize that family there. Is there a resource, tool, app, or a life hack that you've found helpful?
I just found a new app. It's called Blinkist. Have you heard of Blinkist?
I
B
think I've
L
heard
I
someone mention
N
it.
Blinkest. Blinkist, and it's a subscription service, but it's $3 a month, and it's kind of like Cliff Audio. It's audio cliff notes of books.
Okay.
All the best books out there, and they actually have a team of people who are very good with. It's not the actual authors because it's a 15 to 20 minute summary of the greatest books that are out there, and I've been listening to those lately when I've been walking, and it's fantastic. It's just it's hard to have there's so many like you. I'm a reader. Readers are leaders, and leaders are readers, and there's so much I want to read, but this is a great way to cover a lot of territory. And then if you find something you really love, then you can actually get the book and read the whole thing. So Blinkist.
Okay. Very good. We'll include that in the show notes there. And you mentioned this earlier, but where best place for people to find you or find out more about your resources?
HansFinzel.com. HANSFINZEL. HansFinzel.com. You can get a hold of me through there. All my books and my podcasts and resources and videos are all there at HansFinzel.com.
Very good. Well, I'll make sure to include that in the show notes, and definitely just encourage people to check out those books. They've been a real benefit to me over the years, and especially for people getting started off in leadership, it would be a great help there, and just with a biblical focus as well, of tying in some biblical truth there to those things. So. Well, Hans,
Thanks.
it has been an absolute joy to be able to have you on the podcast today, and thank you for being here.
You're welcome. A pleasure to be on the show, and I wish you great success with your podcast. Exciting.
Well, thank you very much. It was great talking to you today. Well, that's all for this show, and we want to thank you again for spending your valuable time with us today.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider taking just a moment and giving us a great review. Your review will help people find the podcast and allow these resources to encourage more people. If you took something valuable away from this episode, please share it with someone who would enjoy it.
If you'd like to find the show notes, blog posts, and free resources for ministry and leadership, as well as some information on my book, Overflowing, visit kylefarran.com. That's KYLEFARRAN.com. Hope to see you soon on a future podcast.